Film noir is the genre that understands what most American cinema spent decades trying to deny: that the world is not organized around justice, that desire is indistinguishable from destruction, and that the most dangerous person in any room is usually the one you invited inside. From 1941 to 1958, Hollywood produced the most concentrated run of morally serious cinema in the medium's history. Films that used chiaroscuro shadow, fatalistic voice over, femme, fatale, and the hard-boiled private eye to say things about post-war American society that the social problem picture would have stated directly and the musical would have denied entirely. These 20 films are the canon, ranked from number 20 to number 1. The list starts where the genre is essential and ends where it has always had to end, with Billy Wilder and Barbara Stanwyck and The Perfect Crime that was never going to work. Number 20, The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. Frank Chambers is a drifter who falls immediately under the control of Cora, the young wife of a roadside diner's owner. The plan to get rid of the husband is Frank's idea and Cora's determination, and the film wastes almost no time establishing their moral capacity before following through. Tay Garnett's adaptation of James M. Cain's foundational noir novel is at once the simplest and the most honest film on this list. Desire leading directly to murder, leading directly to punishment. The mechanics of fate operating without irony. Lana Turner as Cora is a great performance of sexual authority. A woman who uses every tool available without pretending the tools constitute love. John Garfield as Frank has a specific quality of a man who knows he is walking toward destruction and cannot make himself stop. The Postman Always Rings Twice is not the most sophisticated film noir, but it may be the most nakedly honest about what the genre is fundamentally depicting. From a murder born of sexual obsession, what follows returns its protagonist to an impossible woman, a man who knows exactly what she is and goes back to her anyway. Number 19, Criss Cross, 1949. Steve Thompson returns to Los Angeles and his ex-wife Yvonne, now married to a gangster and cannot stop himself from re-entering her orbit despite knowing with complete clarity that she destroyed him the first time and will destroy him again. Robert Siodmak's film is the purest expression of noir's central fatalism, a man who understands his doom and walks toward it anyway, because the alternative, life without her, registers as a worse kind of destruction. Burt Lancaster as Steve is all suppressed violence and buried intelligence, a man physically capable of almost anything except the one act that would save him. Dan Duryea as the gangster Dundee is menacing without theatrics. The heist at the film's center is staged with the procedural clarity Siodmak brought to everything, but it is the love story, doomed, fully illuminated, chosen with open eyes, that makes Criss Cross one of the genre's most quietly devastating works. From a man who returns to his past and finds destruction waiting, what follows employs a private detective who navigates a corrupt present through wit and a battered moral compass. Number 18, Murder, My Sweet, 1944. Dick Powell plays Philip Marlowe in a film that announced a career transformation so complete that audiences who knew Powell only from Busby Berkeley musicals had no framework for what they were watching. Marlowe is hired to find a missing ex-girlfriend for a massive, gentle man named Moose Malloy, and the case spirals into a rich family's dangerous secrets. Edward Dmytryk directs from Raymond Chandler's Farewell, My Lovely, with hallucinatory dream sequences and expressionist shadow work that elevates it above standard adaptation. Powell's Marlowe is the finest screen interpretation before Bogart's, streetwise without cynicism, genuinely warm beneath the hard-boiled exterior, and carrying a moral integrity that makes the corruption around him feel more squalid by contrast. Murder. My Sweet understood that the hard-boiled detective is interesting, not because he is invulnerable, but because he is the only person in the room who finds it impossible not to care about what is right. From Chandler's Marlowe navigating rich people's secrets, what follows strips the detective premise entirely: two young lovers, no moral center, and a spiral of crime that goes nowhere but further down. Number 17, Gun Crazy, 1950. Bart Tare and Annie Laurie Starr meet in a traveling carnival and bond over their love of firearms. A bond that translates from competitive shooting into armed robbery into a fugitive life that has one possible ending. Joseph H. Lewis's film is the template for Bonnie and Clyde and everything that followed. Young, beautiful, violent, and operating on a logic where the only available future is one, neither of them is equipped to survive. Lewis shoots with a kinetic energy that makes Gun Crazy feel like a different genre from the controlled studio noirs of the same period. The famous bank robbery sequence, shot in one unbroken take from the backseat of the getaway car, has a documentary immediacy genuinely extraordinary for 1950. Peggy Cummins as Annie is the film's terrifying engine, a woman for whom violence is not a last resort but a natural register. Gun Crazy understands that the doomed romance is most honest when the doom is visible from the very first frame. From lovers on the run with no future, what follows is a man equally trapped by a city, a scheme that got too big, and a London fog with no available exits. Number 16, Night and the City, 1950. Harry Fabian is a small-time hustler in London who overreaches into a scheme involving professional wrestling that brings him into conflict with people who will not accommodate failure. Jules Dassin, directing in exile from Hollywood's blacklist, shoots Soho's underworld with a rain-slicked, expressionist intensity that makes the city feel like a trap specifically built for Harry's destruction. Richard Widmark, as Harry is the performance of a man with more energy than judgment. Brilliant at the immediate problem, catastrophically short-sighted about consequences, running at full speed toward a wall he cannot see. Gene Tierney provides the film's restrained emotional anchor. Night and the City is about the specific American dream pathology of the man who believes the next scheme will finally be the one, and about what happens when the city he is operating in has no interest in accommodating that belief. From a schemer destroyed by overreaching in London, what follows is a private detective who does the same in Los Angeles, with considerably more apocalyptic consequences for everyone around him. Number 15, Kiss Me Deadly, 1955. Mike Hammer picks up a hitchhiker on a dark road and almost immediately her murder leaves him in possession of a suitcase that everybody in Los Angeles is willing to kill for. Robert Aldrich's adaptation of Mickey Spillane's pulp novel transforms the source material into something its author clearly did not intend. A savage critique of its own protagonist, a private detective more dangerous, more stupid, and more culpable than any criminal surrounding him. The great what's it, the glowing, nuclear contents of the suitcase makes Kiss Me Deadly a noir that ends with the apocalypse, the genre's logical destination taken literally. Ralph Meeker's Hammer is a brute of spectacular incompetence whose self-confidence operates as a weapon against everyone around him. Aldrich shoots with a brutal, modernist energy that anticipates New Hollywood by a decade. Kiss Me Deadly is noir eating itself, the genre's values inverted, its hero revealed as its central threat, and there is nothing in the canon quite like it. From a detective who pursues something he doesn't understand to catastrophic ends, what follows is a man who pursues nothing, destroyed by passivity and a woman he cannot escape. Number 14, Detour, 1945. Al Roberts is a piano player hitchhiking across the country who encounters two strangers, one of whom dies under suspicious circumstances, one of whom is the most ferocious femme fatale in noir history, and watches his life collapse around a mistake he did not make. Edgar G. Ulmer made Detour for $30,000 in 6 days, and it is better than almost everything that cost more. Anne Savage as Vera is a performance of irreducible menace, a woman whose aggression has no seductive dimension, who controls Al through pure will and the threat of exposure, treating his desperation as a resource to be depleted. The film's fatalistic voice-over, Al narrating his own destruction in present tense, gives Detour a philosophical density unusual for a film of its means. This is the purest expression of the noir universe's organizing principle. The world is organized to destroy you, and the harder you resist, the worse it gets. From passivity as doom, what follows is a man equally trapped but by his own desire, a painter destroyed by a woman who was never going to love him back. Number 13, Scarlet Street, 1945. Christopher Cross is a mild, respectable cashier who falls completely under the control of Kitty, a young woman whose boyfriend immediately begins selling Chris's hobby paintings under her name. Fritz Lang's film is the most morally crushing on this list, a story about a gentle, ordinary man whose single transgression leads to a destruction so complete and so unjust that it operates less as crime drama than as a statement about how the universe is organized. Edward G. Robinson plays Criss as a man whose decency has been slowly strangled by circumstance, and the specific helplessness of his situation, he cannot defend himself, cannot reveal the truth, cannot stop what is happening, makes Scarlet Street one of the genre's most disturbing films. Joan Bennett as Kitty is the genre's most coldly pragmatic femme fatale. She does not seduce through warmth, but through accessibility, and the distinction is the difference between manipulation and something closer to simple cruelty. From a decent man, destroyed by desire and circumstance, what follows expands the canvas, a heist, an ensemble, and the human weaknesses that unravel a perfect plan. Number 12, The Asphalt Jungle, 1950. Doc Riedenschneider assembles a crew for a jewelry heist, and the job, perfectly planned, professionally executed, begins unraveling not through external failure, but through the human material it was built from. John Huston's film is the You Are Heist movie, the template that Ocean's 11 and every subsequent caper was built on, and the only entry in the tradition honest enough to treat the enterprise's failure as a genre's logical conclusion. Sterling Hayden, Louis Calhern, Sam Jaffe, and Marilyn Monroe in an early role constitute an ensemble of specific human vulnerability. Each character's fatal flaw not a contrivance but a recognizable human need. Desire, greed, longing for home that cannot be suspended even for the duration of a carefully timed robbery. The Asphalt Jungle is a heist film that works as a study of how human beings fail each other. Huston shoots with a documentary clarity that gives the criminal enterprise a social reality most heist films convert to spectacle. From an ensemble destroyed by human weakness, what follows is a single character study. A man whose talent cannot save him from his own temperament. Number 11, In a Lonely Place, 1950. Dixon Steele is a Hollywood screenwriter, gifted, celebrated, and carrying a capacity for sudden violence that he himself cannot fully account for, who becomes a suspect in a murder he did not commit, and who falls in love with the neighbor who provides his alibi. Nicholas Ray's film is not a conventional crime drama. It is a film about a man whose specific way of being in the world, brilliant, volatile, unable to moderate himself, makes him simultaneously compelling and genuinely dangerous. Bogart's performance as Dix is the most interior and most frightening of his career. The rage that surfaces in specific scenes is not theatrical menace, but something considerably more realistic and more troubling. Gloria Graham as a neighbor builds a performance of grounded, intelligent fear. A woman who wants to trust him and increasingly cannot. In a Lonely Place understands that the most disturbing question in a relationship is not, did he do it, but could he have? From a man whose temperament is his doom, what follows is a detective whose grief drives him into a war he is not equipped to survive alone. Number 10, The Big Heat, 1953. Dave Banyan is a decent detective whose wife is killed by a car bomb meant for him. The moment when the difference between a lawman and a vigilante becomes a question of degree rather than kind. Fritz Lang's film is the most angry entry in the noir canon, powered not by existential fatalism, but by a personal fury at the corruption operating just beneath every official institution Banyan has spent his career serving. Glenn Ford's Banyan is the genre's most morally uncomplicated protagonist, a man without much internal conflict whose drive toward vengeance is rendered throughout as entirely righteous rather than complicated by the usual noir irony. The two female performances elevate the film. Gloria Graham as the gangster's girlfriend provides the most complex moral register, and the violence done to her is the image the big heat cannot shake loose from, and neither can the audience. From a detective's personal fury against systemic corruption, what follows employs a different structural approach. Investigators working backward through a dead man's life to locate the moment everything went irreversibly wrong. Number 9, The Killers, 1946. Two hitmen arrive in a small town and execute a man named Ole the Swede Anderson, who has clearly known they were coming and made no attempt to avoid them. This opening, pure, spare, Hemingway-derived, establishes the film's central mystery. Why does a man simply wait for his own death? Robert Siodmak's film unfolds as an insurance investigator traces backward through the Swede's life, assembling the story of a boxer, a heist, and a woman who destroyed everything. Burt Lancaster's performance as the Swede is entirely retrospective, appearing only in flashback, already dead in the film's opening minutes, and the physical scale and the vulnerability it contains make the Swede's doom feel genuinely tragic. Ava Gardner as Kitty Collins is one of the great femme fatale performances, a woman whose beauty the film acknowledges as a genuine force rather than simply a narrative device. The Killers understands that the most interesting question is never who done it, but why. From investigators reconstructing a life backward, what follows amplifies everything to Baroque, excessive perfection Wells in a corrupted border town at the absolute edge of his creative control. Number 8, Touch of Evil, 1958. Hank Quinlan is a corrupt detective who plants evidence on criminals he believes guilty, and the film's opening, a 3-minute plus unbroken crane shot across the US-Mexico border, announces both Quinlan's moral compromise and Orson Welles' total command of the medium. Touch of Evil is the most technically extravagant film on this list. Welles shooting with a camera that refuses to behave conventionally. Compositions distorted and oppressive in ways that make moral corruption feel like a physical condition of the landscape. Charlton Heston plays the Mexican narcotics officer drawn into conflict with Quinlan. And Welles plays Quinlan as a man of genuine intelligence whose ethical collapse has given him a kind of corrupt wisdom. Touch of Evil is about the specific horror of a man who was once good, and the way corrupt institutions gradually make goodness impossible to sustain in someone who operates within them long enough. The most excessive film in the noir canon, and entirely aware of what it is doing with that excess. From Baroque excess in a corrupted border town, what follows is its formal opposite, precise, atmospheric, a murder mystery built entirely around an obsession with a dead woman. Number 7, Laura, 1944. Detective Mark McPherson investigates the murder of Laura Hunt, an advertising executive found dead in her apartment. As he interviews her circle, a supercilious columnist, a weak socialite, a sharp-tongued aunt, he becomes increasingly obsessed with the dead woman's portrait above the fireplace. Otto Preminger's film is the most elegant in the canon. Venetian blind shadows and a David Raksin score inseparable from the film's romantic obsession. Laura is about the specific power of absence, how desire shapes what is desired, and how the image of a person can be more compelling than the person themselves. The famous plot development that occurs mid-film works not as twist but as the deepest expression of that theme, the object of obsession returned, and the question of whether reality can compete with the constructed ideal. Jean Tierney as Laura carries the central impossibility with a lightness that makes the men's obsession simultaneously understandable and slightly absurd. From an obsession with a dead woman, what follows transfers obsession to a dead city, post-war Vienna, a missing friend, and a mystery where the solution is worse than the question. Number 6, The Third Man, 1949. Holly Martins arrives in post-war Vienna to visit an old friend, Harry Lime, and discovers almost immediately that Lime is dead. As he investigates the suspicious circumstances, the city reveals itself as a place of rubble, black markets, and divided military zones, and Harry Lime reveals himself as something considerably worse than Holly imagined. Carol Reed's film is the most morally complex on this list. The villain is its most charming figure, and the famous cuckoo clock speech makes his amorality almost persuasive. Joseph Cotten as Holly is the genre's great innocent abroad, a man whose naivete is a practical liability in the world he has entered. Orson Welles' Lime appears in only a handful of scenes but has colonized the film's moral atmosphere so thoroughly that his absence from most of it feels like the central presence. Robert Krasker's tilted camera angles and Anton Karas' zither score are inseparable from the film's atmosphere of beautiful, irreversible corruption. From a city of beautiful corruption, what follows is another city of a different kind. Los Angeles, a labyrinthine case, and the hard-boiled detective operating at the absolute height of his powers. Number 5, The Big Sleep, 1946. Philip Marlowe is hired to deal with the blackmailing of a general's younger daughter and immediately navigates a case so convoluted that Raymond Chandler himself, when asked who murdered a particular character, said he didn't know. Howard Hawks' adaptation of Chandler's novel is the platonic ideal of the hard-boiled detective film. Not because its plot is followable, it isn't, but because it understands that Marlowe is not solving crimes but navigating a corrupt world through wit and moral clarity. Bogart's Marlowe is a definitive performance in the genre, intelligent, funny, romantic, without sentimentality, and carrying a code of honor that the world around him has organized itself to make irrelevant. His scenes with Lauren Bacall transcend the genre entirely, operating at a frequency of mutual desire and respect that feels less scripted than documented. The Big Sleep is not the most formally perfect film on this list. It is the most enjoyable, the most alive, and the one that makes the genre feel like it could sustain itself forever. From Marlowe, navigating Los Angeles' labyrinth, what follows is the only film on this list where the detective cannot escape his own past and knows it from the very first frame. Number 4. Out of the Past, 1947. Jeff Bailey runs a small gas station in a California mountain town, waiting with the specific patience of a man who knows something terrible is on its way. Jacques Tourneur's film is the genre's most fully realized statement of doom. A detective who once fell for a gangster's girlfriend, helped her kill the gangster, watched her betray him anyway, and is now being required to pay the accumulated cost of all three decisions simultaneously. Robert Mitchum as Jeff is the genre's most fatalistic protagonist, a man who neither struggles against his fate nor welcomes it but simply narrates it, with the voice over distance of someone watching himself from slightly outside. Jane Greer as Kathy Moffat is the most dangerous femme fatale in the canon. Not the most aggressive, but the most persuasive. A woman who can make a man understand he's being destroyed and continue anyway. Out of the Past is the genre's definitive statement of earned helplessness. From a man trapped in his past, what follows is a woman trapped in hers, considerably more self-aware, considerably more witty, and considerably more directly responsible for the trap she is in. Number 3. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. Joe Gillis is a broke screenwriter who drives into a dead woman's driveway to escape repo men and ends up in the grip of Norma Desmond, a silent film star preparing her return to the screen after 20 years. Wilder opens with Joe floating face down in a swimming pool and works backward, removing suspense in exchange for the deeper experience of watching exactly how a man arrives at that particular ending. Gloria Swanson's Norma Desmond is the most volcanic performance in the noir canon. A woman whose relationship with reality has been severed by fame, who has reconstructed a private world so completely that Joe's presence is the only remaining connection to anything external. William Holden as Joe is the genre's most complicit narrator, a man fully aware of the transaction he's participating in and too comfortable to refuse. Sunset Boulevard is the genre's most precise dissection of Hollywood mythology, and the one film in the canon that treats stardom itself as the most insidious noir trap of all. From Hollywood's darkness and the trap of the past, what follows is the genre's most controlled formal achievement: a private detective, a bird, and the lie that organized everything around it. Number 2, The Maltese Falcon, 1941. Sam Spade is hired to find a missing man and within 24 hours has a murdered partner, a duplicitous client, and 3 men who want a jewel-encrusted statuette that has been circulating through criminal history for 400 years and is, it turns out, a fake. John Huston's directorial debut codified the hard-boiled detective for cinema. Every convention the genre deployed for the next 2 decades arrived essentially complete in this one film, assembled with a wit and precision that most successors spent their careers approximating. Bogart's Sam Spade is the genre's organizing intelligence, a man whose professional ethics are his only fixed point, who makes the moral decision the plot requires, not because the genre demands it, but because the character could not do otherwise. Mary Astor's Bridget O'Shaughnessy is the genre's most accomplished liar, a woman who operates through such complete inventiveness that her final tears are impossible to read as genuine or performance. From the template established in formal perfection, what closes this list is the film that executed that template more devastatingly than any successor ever managed. Number 1, Double Indemnity, 1944. Walter Neff is an insurance salesman who falls for a client's wife, agrees to help her murder the client for the insurance money, and narrates his own confession into a dictaphone in the opening scene. We know from the first frame that he is wounded, that he was caught, and that he did it. Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler's screenplay is the most precisely constructed in Hollywood history. Every scene advancing character, plot, and doom simultaneously with not a word wasted. Barbara Stanwyck's Phyllis Dietrichson is the genre's definitive femme fatale, a woman whose planning extends further and whose morality is more thoroughly absent than Walter ever comprehends until too late. Fred McMurray as Walter is a great casting surprise of the noir era, an actor known for light comedy deployed as a man of fatal weakness and ordinary self-delusion who believes himself smarter than he is. Double Indemnity is not the greatest film in Hollywood history. It is the most perfectly executed, the most airtight, and the one the genre has been trying to equal since 1944 without success. 20 films. The genre's complete argument laid out from number 20 to number 1. Desire, corruption, doom, the femme fatale, the hard-boiled code that cannot survive contact with the world it navigates, and the perfect crime that was never going to work. Film noir did not survive the production code's tightening or the 1960s appetite for something newer and harder. It did something better. It became the genetic material that every crime film made since has been drawing from, consciously or not. These 20 films are where the genre is at its most concentrated, its most formally precise, and its most honest about the thing that American cinema spent most of the century pretending wasn't true. That desire and destruction are the same force moving in opposite directions.